Open up your eyes, it's all brand new. Every wish you make can still come true. I'm an old man, but I have wishes for you.
Hi folks, I'm Richard Duby, and this is Think About It. My guest today is Fran Ferguson, the author of this book. And it's a really important book in the sense that it is a book about recovery from trauma. And although Fran's trauma was the worst I can think of, the worst imaginable, the death of a child, not only the death of a child, but the brutal murder of a child, the book is more about her recovery from that trauma. And I think anyone out there who has gone through trauma can learn a lot from Fran's journey. So Fran, first off, I'd like to thank you for coming. The book, as I said, was a real treasure for me in the sense that I can't say it was a pleasant read, but it certainly was an inspirational read. And one other thing I'd like to say to the folks listening right now, we're going to be talking about some sensitive matters in here, as I alluded to in my opening. It does concern in part the death of a child and the murder of a child. So if that subject is somewhat sensitive for people out there, this might not be the best program for them. Once again, Fran, thank you for coming. Start us off, we have to start off from the beginning, and that is, tell us about Terry, who was your daughter. Tell us a bit about her. Tell us what led up to her murder.
Okay, I'll try to be brief and concise, but whenever I say Terry, I smile because she was my child. She was actually 21 when she was murdered. She was funny. We were best friends, but I was still the mother. If I said to be home by 12, she was home by 12. She was lovely. She always, as most young people, they always look at themselves critically, and she always found a lot of faults about her looks. And I thought that was pretty funny because I thought she was pretty beautiful. She was going at that time part-time to college, and then she was working part-time. And she loved going to the beach because we lived like a block from the ocean down in Satellite Beach, Florida. She had a lot of friends, both male and female. And when I say male friends, they were just like just friends, but she had a lot of friends. She was very loved. And she loved clothes, she loved dancing. Most of all, Terry loved dancing. Weekends, she and her girlfriends would go dancing, and they would dance till just about their shoes fell off. As a matter of fact, I have still, I suppose I shouldn't keep it, but I have 2 pair of her high heels that she wore last. Not at the same time, but they were 2 pair of shoes, and I can't quite get to throw them out because I think she still wants them to dance with. I don't know, but they're still in the bottom of the closet in the spare room.
So she was for all intents and purposes an average, and I'm not talking about as far as her lovability quotient is concerned. But she was a child who didn't cause trouble, a child who had good friends, a child who attended school, she did all the things that she was supposed to.
Oh, yeah. We were blessed. No, we were ever any problems with her. None.
Yeah.
None.
Now, you were married, of course, at the time. And what did your husband do then?
My husband was the police captain.
Okay.
And we always thought that she would not fall for some of the things that she fell for that led to her death.
That led to her death because she was the daughter of a
Because she was the daughter of a police officer, and she Although my husband didn't talk about crime, and besides, it was a little tiny town in Florida. There was no crime there, but we were all well aware of. We read the papers every day. What mother out there doesn't say, be careful, when you go out and, don't ever walk to your car alone at night, and all these things. We told her all those
Sure.
things.
So the murder, the day of the murder, normal day?
Normal day, as a matter of fact, she was out in the backyard. My mom, who lived here in Falmouth, she was visiting, and they were out in the backyard getting some sun, and Terry's boyfriend was coming up from Fort Lauderdale, where he went for spring break, and she couldn't go because her boss changed her schedule at the last minute. So she was getting a nice tan, so she would go out with him this day. And she came in, showered, and got into some clothes, and actually she got into my clothes because we wore the same size. And as a lot of mothers with daughters, the daughter will say, hey, Mom, can I wear this? And
Sure.
Of course you do, But of course, my daughter would say, Mom, can I wear this, after she's already had it on anyway. But anyway, so she went waltzing out with her jeans and my blouse and went shopping to the mall. And I do remember I didn't want her to go to this particular mall. I wanted her to go to one closer. I do remember the feeling. I said, why don't you go to the Melbourne Mall? Oh, no, I want to go to the one in Merritt Island. And anyway, so I realized then I was getting funny feelings.
You were?
I was getting funny feelings.
You would call them premonitions?
Premonitions, intuitions,
Yeah.
all mothers have them.
Yeah.
We all have them.
Yeah.
We know when something's off. We don't know what it is. We don't know why we're getting the feeling, but...
And you alluded to it, but I take it, and I'm asking this already knowing the answer.
Yeah.
You had already, as parents, had the talk with her about strangers and men who might approach her and all the other warnings that go along with being a young woman at a time. So when she went out shopping, you had, for lack of a better term, premonition. But do you know what was the feeling? What was the premonition about? Was it a dread? Was it just
It was an uneasy. It wasn't like she usually on waltzing out the door. It was a little. All I remember is that I didn't want her to go there, but I had no real reason.
Yeah.
I couldn't say, oh, I couldn't give her a reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So she goes shopping. She's gone, and you have no idea how long she's going to be gone. But there comes a certain time. I'm a parent. There comes a certain time on a parent's radar when a child is gone, and suddenly you realize they're gone too long.
Well, when Terry went shopping, I figured she'd be home. She left in the morning. I figured she'd be home by 3 because I think that was when her boyfriend was going to be back from Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
Anyway, she was supposed to be back around 3, and she wasn't, and I thought that was really unusual.
Yeah.
But no dread till it wasn't making any sense. She was supposed to meet a girlfriend, and then they were supposed to go together to the mall.
Right. So when did the first feelings of there's something wrong? I'm not comfortable anymore. First off, how long ago did the murder take place?
This happened in 1984.
Okay, so questions I'm asking you, I realize I'm asking you to go back a long, long way. I mean, 16 and then
It's
24,
40 years.
years now.
40 years.
Yes, I'm asking you to go back 40 years. But I would imagine that the remembrance of when that first shock wave hit you, you can have an approximate time frame. I mean, she's gone 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, or was it simply that you thought she'd be home because her boyfriend was coming?
Yeah. And I know, speaking of feelings, intuitions, that I've learned a lot since then. I've learned so much since her murder. At 8 o'clock that night, I just had a feeling of peace. And I figured she's okay.
Now, what time did she leave in the morning?
She left about 10 or 11 in the morning.
So you're talking about 10 hours?
and this was at 8 o'clock at night. And of course, in the meantime, I'm calling and trying to figure out where she is. And I think Dan was back by then, but I don't remember.
Did they give you, and this is a tough question to ask, but I have to, did they give you an approximate time of death?
No, they couldn't.
Okay. But at 10 o'clock, you felt a sense of peace.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
It was, I remember distinctly. And then I learned later that at 8 o'clock, so somehow or other I must have known that she was dead.
Okay. Let's just change, not topics, but let's go in a little bit different direction here. The murderer himself, this was a gentleman, not a gentleman, this was a human being from Australia.
Correct.
And my understanding is from reading the book that this was a gentleman who was not somebody who was had not been exposed to somebody prone to violence before, because he was on bond from Australia. Am I correct?
Correct.
And what was he on bond for from Australia?
For, I believe, attempted rape.
Okay. And it was a heavy bond. I mean, it was
I think it was $250,000.
$250,000 bond. Yet he entered this country with no problem.
With no problem.
And I'm going to once again leap a bit on the timeline. This was a man who carried out a series of murders, and from what we know from the book and from what you wrote, Terry was
the first confirmed victim.
Right. And the number of victims right now that we have confirmed is about 12?
About 12.
Okay, but we don't know for certain on that.
We don't know. The FBI is still looking at other murders in the United States, up in I think Wisconsin or Minnesota. There are some deaths that they're attributing to him.
So some 40 years later.
40 years later.
Still. And she didn't know this man. This is a complete stranger. There was no rejection involved. It wasn't a case of the fact that he had tried to date her and she rejected. This was just a terrible bolt out of the blue that struck your daughter down. Now, we're going to go back to the mall. She's shopping in the mall. She's supposed to meet friends there.
She was supposed to meet her girlfriend she lived right close to the mall. She was supposed to meet her friend there, but her friend left a note on the door and said that she had injured herself and she had to go to the emergency room. They were playing tag football and she got hit in the eye with a football. So she said, "Sorry, Terry, I'll see you tomorrow at work."
And so she couldn't go. So Terry basically went by herself.
So Terry was by herself.
Okay. Can we reconstruct anything that might have happened in the mall as to how she met this guy? Do they know anything about what transpired?
Well, he was posing as a photographer. He had a camera with him, and this is what they found out later, he would come up to a lovely young girl and say, "Oh, I need to have your picture, and how would you like to be in the magazines," and blah, blah, blah. And she fell for it. And he said, from what I understand, he asked her, this is what the FBI assumed or thought, that he asked her to go out to his car to sign a contract. And later, someone said that they saw an altercation between a man and a woman, and then the car drove off. So that was him putting her.
So he probably, from what we can reconstruct, assaulted her.
Yeah.
Rendered her either unconscious or partially unconscious and drove away with her.
Right.
That'd be correct. Do we know how long, what transpired time-wise between her being taken from the mall and when her body was discovered?
I think I probably have written it in the book, but I remember us, it was days.
Yeah.
It was days.
Right. Okay. So there is nothing that we know about in between her abduction and the discovery of her body, other than what autopsies and the forensics have told us about the way she died.
Right.
And this is going to be tough for the audience to hear, but from reading the book, the way that the coroners have said that she probably died had a lot to do with the fact that she decided that she was not going to be subject to what was about to happen. Can you talk to that? I know you can. Can you talk to that now?
Yeah, she robbed him of killing her. She literally strangled herself.
Yeah.
Because she was hogtied in the back of the trunk of his car. And that was how she died.
Yeah.
After she was beaten beyond whatever.
Right. And, I get a little choked up listening to it. Because of that, you were never able to view the body.
No, it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And now I'm glad I didn't.
Sure. And I think one of the things that's most heartbreaking is one of the methods that they used to identify her is that she was wearing your blouse.
Yes.
Which
I knew right away because I remember my husband came home from work that one time and he had a piece of paper in his hand and they found, because they had found a body about 70 miles from where we lived, and he had the piece of paper in his hand and I looked at it and saw the blouse and saw the description and I said, that's our daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so there's a name with this monster, Christopher Wilder. Mm-hmm. And please tell the audience what happened to Christopher Wilder. Not just what happened to him, but the path of death that he carved
Right.
out.
Well, he started kidnapping, raping, torturing girls in Florida. He went up to Georgia, then he went west toward California, and then recently, he kidnapped a girl, and she recently was on television. They had a show about her. Her name was Tina Marie Risco, and she was somebody that traveled with him back to the eastern part of the United States, and she helped him get other women, lured him to his car. But then when he got to the East Coast, he was trying to escape into Canada, and he and Tina went through Logan Airport. Every time I go through Logan Airport, I think the same thing of them going through there. He was going to escape into Canada, and he gave Tina money and a plane ticket back to California and set her free.
Okay, and then he...
And he drove on toward the border, but when he was in Colebrook, New Hampshire, a police officer spotted him because every police officer in the United States was looking for him. Everyone. And I think, too, part of it, and I might be prejudiced, but my husband was a police officer, and this was a police officer's daughter. And there is a brotherhood, a very strong brotherhood.
Yeah.
So anyway, this police officer did see this car pull into a gas station, and he went over and he asked him for his license and registration. And Wilder reached over into the glove compartment, but instead of the license and registration, he came out with a .357 Magnum this way. The police officer caught his hand, pointed it this way. The trigger was pulled. Christopher Wilder was dead. He did fire one shot, and the police officer was shot in the arm, I think, or something.
Yeah, that was in the book.
Yeah.
So this is the end of Mr. Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult, and I got this in the book too, because it was an end unbefitting him. I mean, he should have been subject to more. He should have been subject to trial. He should have been subject to punishment. Maybe he could have divulged the whereabouts of other young women, which could have brought closure for a number of families that never have had it. These women. So you find out that he's dead. What's your immediate reaction?
I was just relieved.
That was it.
I was relieved.
So, and this is the part that's so fascinating to me and what I feel so many people can benefit from. There's no feeling, I didn't get any of it in the book, of revenge. You didn't say, oh, you know, the SOB is dead. I am so happy. That never came across
No.
your radar. It didn't.
Huh? It didn't.
It
No,
didn't.
I didn't. I was just glad that he was gone. There was no.
What about your husband?
Oh, he wished that he had shot the SOB.
Yeah.
Because he's a police officer and different emotions.
Different mindset.
Different mindset.
Yeah. So you find out he's dead. It's not the end of the story of you and your daughter,
Right.
but it's the end of this chapter that has to do with the brutal murder of your daughter, because there's no place else you can take this now.
No.
That's over with. Now begins what I found the most rewarding part of the book. Now you have to do, you're left with really a binary choice. You either cut yourself off from the world, because I think any parent's fear of losing a child is completely overwhelming. Certainly a parent's thought of losing a child violently is something that we can't even fathom how we would react to it. So you have to decide whether you're going to pull the world in and that's it, or you're going to do something else. What did you choose? And how did you choose it?
Well, to begin with, when you lose a child, it's everything that everybody says. It's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
It's absolutely, your insides are hollowed out, you're gone. But it was probably a week or two later that I just started noticing different, what I call funny things.
Okay.
I call them funny because I didn't know what else to call them. There were funny things going around in the house. And being brought up Catholic, being brought up any religion, you pretty much believe what you hear when you're young, and then as you grow up, it's embedded into your head. And I believed pretty much, everything I was taught, but I wasn't taught what was happening. And I still, right now, think it's a bloody shame.
What's a bloody shame?
The fact that you can go to church and you don't hear the whole truth.
Okay.
And I'm not saying every church, but I'm just saying, the churches that I went to.
When you say you don't hear the bloody truth, what do you mean?
That we are taught, when we're little kids, you're going to die and you're going to go to heaven. But they don't ever say that people that have so-called died can contact you. There's no mention of that at all, or how they can contact you. And I had no idea. No idea. I'm sitting there with my heart aching, and then all of a sudden the fan overhead goes on. And I'd say to my husband, how did you do that? Turn the fan on? I didn't turn the fan on. And then you would feel a whiff of perfume, and it was hers. And it took me, I don't know how long, to realize that she was saying that her body was gone, but that thing that we all have inside of us, that spirit, that energy, that whatever it is,
The essence of it.
it hadn't changed a bit.
Okay, so what you're talking about, as you say, you were brought up in a specific church. I would think that all, and I am by no means an expert in this field, quite the contrary, but I would, just from being on this planet for a long time, I would say that most religions, Western religions, would say that some form of contact or some form of experience, rather, not even contact, experience with those that have passed on is contrary to the teachings of these religions, because the only entities that are in contact with those that have passed on are deities or representatives of deities, perhaps, somehow, way, shape, or form. But certainly, individuals, lay people, are not privy to any form of continued contact with those that have passed on.
And that's a shame. I mean,
There's a comfort, right?
it's a wonderful comfort. I mean, I have conversations with my daughter now. I have conversations with people that passed on, and I get answers. So, I mean, if I'm no different than you or anybody else, the only reason is I believe I will get the answers.
Now, there are going to be people who watch this, I'm certain, who said, you know, this woman is not
She's lost her cookies.
Yes,
yeah.
right. And,
She's out there. Woo.
and the guy who's questioning her is just appeasing. I'm not appeasing you in any way, shape, or form. I truly believe that comforts you is real. I can't judge anybody's form of comfort.
Right.
So one of the things, though, that I got from the book that I found remarkable, and if you talk about a little, was the handwriting situation.
That handwriting was, that happened about 2 or 3 weeks after Terry was murdered. My husband and I would sit like we are here, and my husband sat there, and every morning he'd read the paper, and I would sit and read a part of the paper that he's already read or something. And then I remember one morning I had my hand on my coffee cup, and my coffee cup was moving. And when I say moving, it was like gliding over ice. And I said, hey, honey, look at this. And my cup would move and move. And I said, what is this? And it was in a figure 8 pattern, always in a figure 8 pattern. And he said, what are you doing? He says, it's wet underneath the cup. Wipe it off. I said, it's not wet. It's just moving. And he said, that's impossible. So that went on for, a few more days. And then he said, well, why don't you put a pen in your hand? And that's when it happened. I started writing.
Yeah.
And the first thing I wrote was, love, Terry. And that's why that is love, Terry.
Yeah, and Bruce, if you can get tight on this just for a second, there is a note.
Her last note to me.
Yes, and that note is the title of the book, Wake Me Up at 10, Love, Terry.
But she would write, and it was amazing, it was in her handwriting.
Yeah.
She has a completely, you notice I say she has a completely different handwriting than me.
Yeah.
And my husband would look at it. My husband was, it's either black or it's white. There is no in between. His mind is made up. No, and that's fine. I had no problem with that. I mean, I was ecstatic. He could believe what he wanted to. Everybody, that's their freedom.
Police officer.
He was a police officer. That's right.
He dealt with that every day.
Yeah. So I started writing things, and I was writing to somebody, and I didn't know who. And I mean,
I hear you.
I'm just as ordinary as anybody can be, and I'm writing this stuff, and it's like, what the heck?
And I think that the audience has to realize that you don't portray yourself as somebody with special gifts and offer these gifts to other people or, this is just you. I got nothing from this book that said, I want to commercialize or monetize or anything like that. This is just your story, and that's...
Yeah. Well, what's funny, Rich, is that everything that happened to me or everything I do, everybody else can do. Mm-hmm. It's not, no. And that's what I say when you go to church and it's like there's somebody holier than you. No, there isn't. Or there's somebody wiser than you. No, there isn't. And I mean, they can do exactly, or they can have experiences like I have, and some of them have them and they don't even know they're having them.
Yeah.
And that's a waste. I mean, okay, so you die. And then you're leaving all these people behind that you really love, and you want to get in touch with them. Somehow you love them, and you see them, oh my God, they're so sad. You can do things. I don't know how it's done. It's an energy thing. But you can, when they get in the car, you can put a song on a car radio that's meant for just them and they know it, and so forth and so on. There's so many ways.
The other end of this spectrum, and I'm being careful the way I couch this phrase, the other end of this spectrum led to your divorce.
Right.
Talk to that a little bit.
And I did note, and I think I wrote there in the
You
book
did.
too, that a lot of couples who have lost a child get divorced because of, I think the way men grieve and women grieve, two different things, and
I don't know if I agree.
and see, I don't
Go
know
ahead.
because I don't know
Yeah.
how a man grieves.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
You know, I
Please,
wish
yeah.
I did,
Yeah.
and then I found out that my husband did love her. He was crushed, but I didn't think he was. And after the murder, and it was just us, I was so interested in, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm writing words and letters and sentences from somewhere I don't know how. I wanted to know. I have a huge, I need to know things.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted no part of it.
Right.
And it became a big part of my life. I didn't go out of, I didn't go out of my mind with it, but it was like when you get a hobby that
Yeah.
fascinates you,
Was there a lot, of course, when your daughter, when Terry disappeared, there was a lot of coverage. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So you two were subject to media at that point. When Wilder was killed, were you also subject to media?
Afterwards, yes.
Yeah. So there was a period of time where you two were, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
in the news.
Involved,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That ends. Wilder's dead. Basically the story is over. So, to my way of thinking, emotionally, the emotions, the emptiness even increases.
Right.
At that point.
What's left? Like the
exactly.
building has been destroyed.
Yeah, what's left?
What's left?
Elvis has left the building.
Elvis has left the building,
Right.
and what's left? And
that was tough for your husband and you to reconcile.
it was.
Now, we don't have 3 hours, so I'm going,
Yeah.
I know that your husband and you, although you divorced, it was not an acrimonious situation. I mean, it was not one of these divorces where you never spoke to one another again. Talk a little bit about.
No, because it sounds strange, but I actually still loved him.
Yeah.
And my friends would say, you can get alimony and you can do this. And no, I didn't want anything. It's like I said, and maybe I mentioned it. People get married and it's supposed to last a lifetime. Who says that? I mean, it would be wonderful if it would, and some marriages do. But some marriages are not meant to last a lifetime.
I have to interrupt. Was your husband a Catholic also?
No.
He wasn't. Okay.
No. And I mean, I didn't care. We got married here in Falmouth by a justice of the peace. No, but, and that didn't bother me. And he didn't go to church. And Terry and I went to Mass until she got to be about 17 or 18. And that was enough of that.
So the two of you have divorced. You're on your own at this point. Did you remarry?
No.
Okay. So you have dealt, and I have to ask you, I don't remember from the book, I have to be honest with you, when you were divorced. Do you have, I know you can't
No,
pick
I know
that.
that it was about 2 years after she was murdered.
Okay, so you've been on your own for a long time. Right? During that time, have you ever become despondent about Terry's death? Now, I'm going to define my terms here a little. Of course, you miss her. That's not, although you are in some way, shape, or form, and once again, I have to watch my terms, not in communication, but there's a link there, there's a thread there between the two of you. Although that exists, her physical presence is absent.
Right.
Did you ever get despondent from the lack of that physical presence? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Oh, you mean right after she was killed? And
The 30-some-odd years since.
Oh, yes. Every once in a while it would hit me.
Yeah.
Because there's a memory, you have a mind, and that mind has, once you get something on your mind, you can either go with it or turn it off. I mean,
Of course.
But yeah, Terry would all of a sudden, or a memory would pop in, and yes, I'd get melancholy, but not brokenhearted, because I knew she still existed. And I remember once when I was crying, it was shortly after she was killed, and I was screaming, crying, heartbroken, and all of a sudden I heard her voice in my head. And it was like even you talking. She was, "Oh, Ma, get over it." And I stopped. And it was just like she had walked in the room. "Oh, Ma, come on,
Really?
cut it out, like, get over yourself." And so I knew that, I don't know how, but she, whoever she was without a body, the sense of humor still existed. So,
Have you ever spoken to, I use this term, have you ever spoken to a professional, and that professional is always in quotes because it either means a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a scientist of some way, shape, or form. Have you ever spoken to anybody about this?
a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
Either one.
No.
Never felt a need to.
No, I mean, I have no problem. I mean, they might, but I don't. I know who I'm talking to.
So if people out there have, before I get to that, I have people in my life. This past weekend, I met with friends of mine. They're men that I met first when I was 18 years old, and we all lived together. And from the time 18 to now, and I am in June, I'm going to be 80, so over 60 years, we have remained in touch, and not only in touch, but almost as brothers. We're incredibly close to one another. The concept, the thought of one of them, maybe it's me, of one of them not being here is overwhelming to me. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things I took from your book, the comfort that I took from your book, is that should it be one of them, that I would be graced with the ability to move forward the way you have. I think the benefit of the book is not so much, and please, when I'm done with this, jump in and tell me where I'm wrong or where you agree with me. The benefit of the book is that whatever means you have of maintaining a relationship with the missing person, with the missing being, take advantage of.
Yeah.
And you don't need anybody to tell you how to do it.
That's right. It's such a gift, and why not take the gift and run with it?
I have a cousin, my only living relative, who was extremely close to my mother. And when she says she talks to my mother all the time, it's not what you see in movies. It's not, she just talks and she gets some comfort from that. So would you agree with me in what you've laid out in this book, is that whatever trauma you've had in your life, you can get by, or you can flourish if you look into yourself and just find the way to do it.
Yes.
And that we all have that power.
We all have the power. We all have power we have not even tapped into. We are remarkable creatures. And with Terry's death, I happened to tap into a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I mean, it carried me through. And I mean, I just lost my sister a couple of months ago. And I was devastated. And then I realized that, like Terry, I can still talk to her. And I do. I talk with her, and even not even out loud sometimes, and sometimes in my mind. But I know she can hear me. And I know that she is completely happy where she is. And so why would I not want her to be happy
Yeah.
and physically well?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important, and we're going to have to wrap it up, but I think it's important that people know that you are talking about a situation not where your sister and Terry are romping through clouds someplace.
Right, no,
you know, none of the Hollywood.
No, it's not. This is no Hollywood,
Yeah,
no.
it's not some ability to contact the dead, so to speak. What's remarkable about the book, and also about you, is the fact that you have found a pathway to peace with certain things. That's remarkable. And the fact that Terry has remained close to you through all this, and the fact that you feel the bond has never been broken, I think is you used the word several times, remarkable, and something that we can all learn from in some way, shape, or form.
And that bond between a mother and a child is never broken.
Yeah.
The death doesn't do it.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
It was great.
I had a wonderful, wonderful visit from you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And folks, that's it for this edition of Think About It. We are on every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Every second week there is a new show on. If you would like to comment on the show, simply drop us an email at goandthinkaboutit@gmail.com. That will be on screen after the show is over. And we will see you during the next episode. In the meantime, go and think about it. Thank you very much.
Open up your eyes, it's all brand new. Every wish you make can still